Hello, I'm Doug McConnell, and we've got some great discoveries for you along the open road.
We'll reveal a grand legacy of conservation in Sonoma County. Precious lands preserved, restored, and made accessible to all of us over the past 4 decades. We'll explore an historic ranch the Sonoma Land Trust is purchasing for public access with strong support from the owners themselves. And we'll discover how the Land Trust and its partners plan to minimize risks of fire on protected land, provide room for wildlife to roam, and enable everyone to get close to nature in their own backyard. From seashores to bay shores to soaring summits and verdant valleys, Sonoma County's lovely and diverse ecosystems comprise one of nature's grand masterpieces.
Those are the kind of iconic places that we need to protect in this county.
Over the past 4 decades, the Sonoma Land Trust has preserved more than 50,000 acres here of precious but vulnerable lands in partnership with willing sellers and public agencies, and with the support of the community and private donors large and small who share a common vision for Sonoma's future.
We are looking to create a sustainable and resilient, connected system of lands as we can that will carry us into the next century and beyond.
The Land Trust's Wendy Elliott and her colleagues believe that healthy and resilient lands can help sustain healthy and resilient communities. They've saved threatened wildlands and wildlife, restored marshlands and waterways, preserved agricultural traditions, and helped create access for all people to parks and open spaces near and within Sonoma's cities and towns. But as populations and risks of climate change grow fast, the Trust and its allies have a lot of work yet to do and are motivated by a keen sense of urgency.
So we do have a sense of the time is now. You know, we need to act quickly, we need to act decisively and strategically, and we think that the Land Trust is pretty good at doing that.
On this journey, we'll discover some of the Sonoma Land Trust's achievements and plans for the future. We'll visit the Trust's Glen Oaks Ranch near Glen Ellen, and wildlands the Trust and its partners are working to protect above the recently closed Sonoma Development Center. But we'll start on the roof of the Mayacamas Mountains, straddling Sonoma and Napa counties, on land the Trust is seeking to purchase from a family with deep California roots.
Well, the Sonoma Land Trust has an extraordinary legacy of protecting magnificent landscapes for the benefit of nature and all of us. And a classic example is right where I'm standing here, on an historic ranch high up in the Mayacamas Mountains. It's called the McCormick Ranch.
The members of one family have owned a McCormick Ranch since before the gold rush, and now they're selling it below market value to the Sonoma Land Trust to preserve its wildness and its historical legacy.
You get this, climb up here.
John McCall and Tony Nelson with the Land Trust take me to the top of Big Hill for a very big view.
Welcome to the top of Big Hill, Doug.
Boy, I tell you, well, it's a climb, but oh man, look at out here.
So this is why we brought you up here.
So on top of the world up here in lots of ways. Holy cow.
That's what it feels like, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does. I mean, that's Mount St. Helena out there in the distance, right?
So we're looking, here, we're right on the top of the ridgeline between Napa and Sonoma Counties. And it's just, it feels like on top of the world for this part of California.
Boy, no kidding. I mean, this is absolutely incredible, an area most of us never see.
This 654-acre ranch is bordered by Sugarloaf Ridge State Park and Hood Mountain Regional Park and Open Space Preserve. When purchased, McCormick Ranch will connect 10,000 acres of parks for public recreation and secure safe passage for wildlife passing through from near and far.
One of the cool things about this property is the location and the topography you're talking about, because it's really kind of a gateway in this larger corridor from Napa to Sonoma.
The headwaters of 3 creeks flow from McCormick Ranch towards the bay and the Pacific, The ranch provides natural corridors for wildlife, migrating up streams and over land.
You know, we see tracks of all sorts of animals all over, so we know that they're here. Bears, mountain lions, bobcats to deer, everything's here.
I like to think of this piece, the 650 acres, as kind of the crown jewel of what was a much larger ranch, you know, multiple thousand acres that the families had since the 1800s. And they have had a conservation ethic from the very beginning, helped transfer land into Sugarloaf State Park, and this is the last and best piece.
Jim Perry and his children own the ranch. Jim first fell in love with and married Sandra Learned Perry, a direct descendant of the ranch's founders. Then Jim fell in love with the land itself and its rich California heritage.
I had the privilege of being a steward of this land for 30 years, and I just love this property.
Sandra's ancestors began homesteading this land in the 1840s, and her great-great-grandmother, Molly McCormick, known as the Bear Flag Baby, was perhaps the first baby born in California after the Bear Flag Revolt in June 1846. The family raised sheep and cattle for generations, living close to this land they all cherished. When Jim's wife passed away in 2015, and it came time to sell the ranch, Jim and his sons chose to maximize protection over profit.
We came to the conclusion that we'd like to preserve this for future generations and to respect the family that had lived here, the first through the fourth generation that lived here, worked hard, toiled here, lived through tragedy, and we knew how much they loved this land, and we wanted to preserve it for future generations.
Respecting the legacy and capacities of the Sonoma Land Trust and sharing its missions and goals, the family generously set the sales price for the ranch well below what it would bring if it were sold for subdivision and development.
We have to raise the money to buy this ranch, and that takes some time, and we're halfway there. We're really picking up momentum, but we hope to be done by, well, we will be done by November 2020.
And when November 2020 comes, and this land, assuming you've raised all the money, can be finally purchased, and it becomes part of the Sonoma Land Trust, Jim, how are you going to be feeling when you have that moment come and you begin to look ahead towards the next generations for this place?
Well, it'll be very exciting for me. I mean, there's some remorse in that it's our family property for 170 years, but it's time to pass on the gauntlet to agencies like Sonoma Land Trust and preserve it and keep it, you know, in its natural state.
This isn't like a normal kind of real estate transaction where you may not even meet the people who are buying your land. You might meet them once or twice. This is, you know, we're in regular contact. We're coming out here all the time.
This is about a relationship.
Exactly.
It's a relationship built on trust and a shared aspiration that nature and all of us who visit will thrive together here in the generations ahead.
Well, it's rewarding. It's exciting. I can't wait to see it, you know, come to completion and to see people walking on this property, enjoying it.
Well, I think this project will go down as one of the most important ones that we've ever been a part of.
So this is going to be awesome, and we're going to celebrate this, and it's a very important piece, but we do have more to do.
When we come back, managing protected land in Sonoma to minimize risks of fire and securing land to benefit wildlife and all of us. OpenRoad is made possible by the generous support of our underwriters, dedicated to protecting our natural and historical treasures in the Bay Area and beyond. Additional support is provided by these institutions, also caring for our special environmental and cultural legacies and making them accessible to each and every one of us, now and for all time.
I'm standing in the Sonoma Land Trust Glen Oaks Ranch near Glen Ellen in Sonoma Valley. And the McCormick Ranch, by the way, is just a few miles as the crow flies over the Mayacamas Mountains behind me. Now, this ranch is part of the wildlife corridor that the Land Trust and its partners are working to protect. Now, during the big fires of October 2017, this ranch burned, including right here.
Shortly after the fires raged through here, we came to look with the Sonoma Land Trust, Tony Nelson. We saw a charred landscape, but we heard from Tony optimism for the future.
This is a pretty a burn scene we're looking at here.
Yeah, this is one of the more intense scenes. One of the things that I see when I look at this that I think a lot of people don't is renewal and opportunity.
In January of 2019, we returned with Tony to see life springing up all around us and nature beginning to flourish.
So Tony, we're back about 14 months after the fire, and things look like life is returning here somehow.
Oh yeah, well of course in a lot of ways it never left, right? It was all underground for a short time is what happened. But remember that fire is a natural process that has shaped the character of our landscapes for millennia or longer. And while it was devastating in our human communities, these landscapes are used to it. And so they know how to respond, and you can see the result. In a relatively short amount of time, the growth has been tremendous.
Promoting healthy ecosystems in fire-prone Sonoma, while also reducing the destructive impacts of future fires on the county's communities, will require strategy and collaboration.
Fire, as this natural process, doesn't recognize human boundaries. And if we are to be effective at managing fire, we need to look at it at a landscape scale. So Sonoma Land Trust and 5 other agencies who own big acreages working to try to create a collaborative that we can look at that whole landscape as one with respect to vegetation management and fire management.
The components of a fire management strategy here include thinning vegetation mechanically, improving firefighting access along roads, and carefully prescribing and controlling burns conducted by CAL FIRE.
Why is the use of fire, and I know it was done by indigenous people here for thousands of years before the rest of us came, how does that work as a tool to try to reach the objectives and the goals that you have?
In a way, it selects the species that we know of as natives, and that in turn is going to promote native animal species, of course the herbivores, but insects and other things that need those native plants. So it has elements of both getting this natural process of fire to do what it's supposed to always have done on these landscapes for the benefit of our ecosystems, and at the same time try to ameliorate these potentially devastating wildfires.
Immediately after the fire in 2017, wildlife returned to Glen Oaks.
Oh, they're doing fantastic, of course, with all this vegetation here.
And began to take advantage of its protected land and waterways and safe passage through the wildlife corridor from here towards more protected property across Sonoma Valley.
Wildlife are key elements of our ecosystems, and without them, a lot of the other facets will start changing, and not necessarily to the better. But as the landscape gets more and more fragmented by changes in land use, we need to provide these corridors, these avenues of movement, so they can find new home ranges, new mates, and so on.
So from here, the wildlife corridor stretches that way over to Sonoma Mountain, yes?
Yep, starts from the Blue Ridge Berryessa area, comes down through McCormick Ranch, down the Mayacamas, crosses the valley here at Glen Oaks Ranch, right across the highway to Sonoma Developmental Center, then up into Sonoma Mountain, and then clear on to Marin and the coast.
Tony and I follow the wildlife corridor into woodlands above the campus of the recently closed Sonoma Development Center, where we meet the Land Trust Wendy Elliott on 700 acres of wildland owned by the state of California.
Tony, I'm sure to agree that this is key to this wildlife corridor. It's narrow, and this property is the place that sits right in the middle. It's the linchpin to keeping that corridor open. So it's just critical that this piece of property be preserved, and we're going to get there.
And what's your hope for the future of this wild land up here?
Well, our hope is that all of this beautiful open space with oak woodlands and streams and forests and meadows will be permanently protected and transferred to state parks and county parks. Because we've got Jack London Park right there.
Right over there, right next door.
Right next door. And on the other side, we've got the regional park right next door. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Securing this property and linking it seamlessly and permanently to public parks that surround it will benefit wildlife and us for generations to come.
In a way, the wildlife are indicators of a healthy system, and that healthy system is good for wildlife, but it also provides clean water for us, places for us to come out and enjoy beauty, all the things that make Sonoma County such an amazing place to live.
The Sonoma Land Trust is focused on saving, stewarding, and restoring the county's natural treasures, making them appropriately accessible to all of us and as resilient as possible to our rapidly changing climate.
We think we know it's going to get hotter and drier. Getting it down to a micro level, we don't really know. You know, we can't tell you there's going to be saguaro cactus here in 100 years. We don't know. So what we do know is that if we protect large connected landscapes, thousands of acres, that has topographic diversity, mountains, valleys, different kinds of ecosystems, we're more likely to be able to be resilient to those changes as they come. We're providing more opportunity for wildlife to find their new niches and more space for the natural systems to occur. That's in the acquisition side. That's about as fine-tuned as we can do it right now. It's just go big and go connected.
When we come back, giving the gift of nature to everyone in Sonoma County. Protecting, caring for, and restoring lands and ecosystems have been the core missions of the Sonoma Land Trust for more than 40 years. But the Land Trust is now also deeply committed to helping the people of Sonoma forge close, personal relationships to nature and the work of the Land Trust, and inspiring them to become advocates for the future of nature in their own backyards. And helping to make that happen is a Sonoma County native, Neil Ramos. Neil, you grew up in this county. You are now the Community Programs Director for the Sonoma Land Trust. Tell me, why is it important to reach out to the public? What are these community programs you're working on?
Yeah, well, for a long time, the Land Trust community has focused on the acquisition and stewardship of lands. But what's really important to our mission as well are the people and the communities that we're benefiting by protecting those lands. So the Community Programs Department is attempting to reach out to new groups, to diverse audiences, and really have a conversation and hopefully stimulate some interest and some relevancy for land conservation to everyone's lives.
Now, among the different projects you have going on, you've got a brand new summer camp program going on. It's called Bay Camp. Tell me about that.
Well, Bay Camp is a bilingual summer camp program at the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. It builds on our conservation work to restore over 1,000 acres of wetlands at Sears Point. It's a camp where we're having children from all over the county come and join us out on the water. They get to kayak, they get to hike along the Bay Trail, and they get to learn a little bit about marshland ecology and conservation.
They get to have a good time. They get to be in the mud, right?
Yep.
Be up close to nature.
Yeah.
And you know, and for many of these kids, that may be the first time they've ever had that kind of experience.
It is. We're particularly proud of our scholarship program for Bay Camp. We last year provided full or partial scholarships to over 80% of our campers. And this next year, we're hoping to bring over 100 children from throughout the county out to the wetlands to learn about ecology and conservation.
You know what, I want to go, I want to be part of it, that sounds great. I look forward to hearing more as time goes on. But you know, you really are making a big effort through Bay Camp and other ways to reach out to a young, diverse you know, population that typifies Sonoma County.
Yeah.
Why is that so important? How are you doing that?
Yeah, well, the conservation movement hasn't always reached all communities equitably. The young and diverse audiences and groups within our county are going to be the future. So it's really important for the Land Trust to reach out to them, to build relationships, and to build an appreciation of conservation within our county.
And you're doing this with a wide variety of sub-communities in Sonoma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're reaching out to all sorts of groups, to children and youth, to families, to Latino communities and Native American communities, to really everyone. So we're really hoping to have that conversation, engage everyone with our work, have them help us drive some of those outcomes of that land conservation.
And have the same kind of passion and love and enjoyment, because these lands they belong to all of us.
They do in fact.
And so if we can all be engaged and be involved, it's good for nature, it's good for us, good for the community. And Neil, it's great to see you. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to following news in the months and years ahead.
Thank you.
To find out more about the Sonoma Land Trust and its community programs, go to NBCBayArea.com/OpenRoad. Stay with us for reflections on the legacy of the Sonoma Land Trust. Open Road is made possible by the generous support of our underwriters, dedicated to protecting our natural and historical treasures in the Bay Area and beyond. Additional support is provided by these institutions, also caring for our special environmental and cultural legacies and making them accessible to each and every one of us, now and for all time. Quite a bit of Sonoma County's magnificent and diverse terrain has been set aside for nature, for us, and for all time, thanks to the foresight, tenacity, and leadership of many individuals and institutions, including the Sonoma Land Trust, which has partnered with private landowners, public agencies, and generous donors, large and small, to protect more than 50,000 acres of land since 1976. The Land Trust and its many public, private, and nonprofit partners seem to believe that the land is the heart and soul of Sonoma, and if the land can be healthy, its communities and all its people can be healthy too, and together forge a bright future. The Land Trust and residents of Sonoma have come a long way over the years and appear to be creating a lasting legacy that can grow and flourish in the years ahead, despite the challenges of a changing climate and the needs of an ever-growing population. They appear to know that the secret sauce for their success will continue to be caring for the health of nature and people as one and indivisible, and as a principal priority for generations to come. That's in fact a not-so-secret recipe for the future we would all be wise to follow while we still have time. For more information about the Sonoma Land Trust, go to NBCBayArea.com/OpenRoad. Well, that's our show for now. Hope you enjoyed it, and will join us next time for more adventures and discoveries right here and online along the open road. I'm Doug McConnell. See you soon.